we do some research in our labor market, and I don't gloss over this lightly. I do research labor reports for prospective clients in our own businesses. I do them every single day. I'm doing research in labor markets all around the country. And basically, this is called Hiring Insights. And it's from Indeed. I can look it up on Indeed. You have to have a subscription, though, and it costs some money. So I can help you with this if somebody needs help out there with this, if you don't want to spend money to buy it.
But it's okay to spend money. It's okay to spend some money.
Yeah, it's okay to spend money because it's well worth it. This is actually what it takes to figure out how much you need to boost and sponsor. And when you figure this research out, your return on your investment becomes much better as well. So one of the first things I look at on a very high level, if I was to choose one piece of data and that was the only thing available to me, it would be this number right here. It's called a competition score. It's a competition score. And what it means is this: for a job title that we put in there and a specific location, so window cleaner in Cleveland, Ohio is an example, right? It'll pop up and let me know how competitive your labor market is for that job title compared to the rest of the country. If it's above 70, it's pretty much a very competitive labor market. Okay. I think when I typically do Minneapolis, Minnesota, it's around 86. I've seen it at 90. I just looked at
that probably resonates because we have done a little bit better lately. It's only cost us $4,000 a month instead of $5,000 a month.
It actually has gone. The score went down because I was just looking at it before. So here's an example. I did window cleaner just in the United States overall to get a really high view. In July of 22, the average score was 77. Okay, mm-hmm. That's a tough job title to get in this labor market. Now, last year at the same time, it was only 68. So it was moderately competitive last year at this time. And if you guys remember, last year at this time was not an easy labor market. Right? No. It was still a pretty damn tough labor market. Dan just covered the numbers on it, how much we had to spend. Now, in 2019, before COVID hit, or maybe it was just a little bit around COVID time, it was 44 out of 100. It was pretty damn moderately, not so hard. You don't have to spend thousands. Okay.
I remember when we used to be like, man, are we really going to spend $500 this month on ad boosting? You're talking like $100 a week. We need to spend on ad boosting.
Yep.
What? You got to be out of your mind.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, same company, Blue Sky Services, same position, same pay, same everything except labor market's different. The score is usually around 85 to 90. How much did it cost us per employee? About $1,000 in boosting to find one good employee, not $1,000 a month, $1,000 to find one good employee.
Actually, it ended up being about $2,000 per employee that we kept. We hired 45, right. So it ended up being like $700 per employee that we hired, but it was about $2,000 per employee that we kept. Again, which they're worth $15,000,
right? And
we paid $2,000 for them. Like that's a 7.5x return if you're doing that math. It's pretty good return on investment. Still, it's a lot of money, and it's still a phenomenal return on investment. It's crazy.
When I run Cincinnati's competition score, normally it's around the 60-ish range, 55 to 60. I've seen it as low as in the 30s. And that's why it costs a couple $100 instead of a few $1,000 there. So that's one of the things you're going to want to look at if you do some research in your labor market. And then there's some other cool things too, like the average pay. If you don't know what the average pay is around your area, you're in trouble. I mean, it's something you're going to want to know. And let me give you a really big tip. If you're in the part of a country where it is a little bit less standard of living, so the wages are a little bit lower than California, New York, and things like that, if you're starting wages under $15 an hour, your application flow is absolutely going to be horrible, even if you're boosting and sponsoring. The country and the kids that are the guys that are 20 some years old, 30 years old, think minimum wage is $15 an hour. And everybody does. It's not. But that's what the perception is of all that, right? We talked about perceptions. Yep. So we want to figure that out. And then something else that's really cool is when you're doing your research, it'll tell you what is getting the most clicks as far as terms, which I call keywords, and job titles. What are the job titles that people are actually putting into their phones when they're searching for a job? And it gives you that right here. Even maybe as cool is who are the top employers. So if you are in this labor market with this job title and you do not see your company's name on this list, there's only a couple things that you can be doing wrong. One is you're not boosting and sponsoring as much as the rest of your competition. Number two, you've got such a miserable job, nobody wants to apply for it, and you can spend $10,000 in boosting. But if you're starting out at $11 an hour, $12 an hour, $13 an hour, and you're screening and saying, if you look like this, smell like that, and you have an accent or this or that, and the other don't work here, you're not going to show up on here either. So most of the time, if you're not showing up on here, it's because you're not boosting and sponsoring enough. These people understand the supply and demand of the labor. And they understand Dan's numbers perhaps a little bit better. It could be that they're a really big company compared to yours, but that's the way it is. They might be able to afford a little bit more, but if you want to compete, you've got to look at that number. I tell my clients, if you're not in the top 3 or 5, we need to really start boosting a little bit more or thinking about some other ways that we can increase your spot in the top 5 or top 3 here. All right. And then the last thing that I look at is I like to look at the most common locations, because we get a lot of times we'll get clients that say, I've gotten a bunch of losers in that location. Don't you dare put it in there. And I'm looking going, Pittsburgh, PA, I get it. A lot of us look at big cities because there's more people. So we'll probably see more people that we might not want to hire, because the odds are if you see more people and there's a few people you don't hire, if you double that, you're probably going to see double the amount of people you wouldn't hire, right? But so why does Burger King put up shop across the street from McDonald's? Because that's where everybody is. Why does Walmart sit there and go up and Family Dollar pops up? They're in direct competition with them because that's where everybody is. If you don't want to be where everybody is, you need to go start working for somebody else. This says it all right here. There's no hiding this. This says it all, and nothing says it more than this, because this is the scorecard right here. That's the scorecard. You're losing the game. Yep. And as I say, if there was only one thing I can choose, it would be this here, because it's almost always, if your score is high, you're going to need to spend more or get creative or do some other things that maybe you haven't tried.
Is there, do you feel like, we're pushing, 80, 90 in Minneapolis, and we're spending 10x that score per hire. We only keep 1 out of 3 hires, right? And we could go through that math too, about how many applicants you need, how many candidates you're going to get out of those applicants, how many interviews you're going to get out of those candidates, how many people actually get hired, and then how many people actually show up, and then how many people actually stay, right? It's like you need hundreds of applicants to get one good employee that stays. Yep. But is it like a reasonable thing to say, okay, if we're around a 72, maybe we'd spend $720 per hire in boosting, roughly? You might spend $1,500, or you might spend $300, but like 720 would be like a spot you would maybe say, I'd boost that much to start with and see what we got.
Here's exactly how I put it. Because I'll go through a demo and I'm talking, and at the end I go over, now let's talk about boosting and sponsoring. And they'll say, well, how much do you think I'll have to boost and sponsor? And I say this every day. There's 2 answers to that. Number one is, the truth is, I don't know, because I haven't done the labor in your research in your labor market, number one. Number two, we rely on third-party platforms called Facebook, Google for Jobs, Craigslist, Indeed, all those platforms. We rely on them. Anybody that's listening to this, go call Google, go call Facebook, go call Craigslist, and if somebody answers the phone, let me know. Okay, because I've never had anybody answer a phone. So therefore, they're not going to say it's going to cost $412.37 and you're going to have a really good employee for 3 years that you're going to love, right? That's the true answer. Now, I don't let them hanging. I say, here's a range. Here's what I do know on our own company. I'm not going to necessarily tell all of my customers information, but here's what I know about Blue Skies window cleaning. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, we're normally around an 85, 90, somewhere in there, and it costs us roughly between $1,000 and $1,500 in boosting and sponsoring to find one good employee. Same company, same everything in Cincinnati. It's going to cost us around $400, $300 to find a good employee or two. You're going to fall probably somewhere in between there.
Somewhere between there.
somewhere between there. So when I do the research for a client, I put together a research report that's a 2 or 3 page report that has a bunch of data in here, not just this stuff, but a bunch of other data in there. And I show it to them and we say, what did we talk about on the demo? Here's where your score is. Here's either the good news or the bad news, man. Here's where it's at. And we let them know. And then it really gets them kind of ruffled up when I go, here's your 3 competitors here, or 4 or 5. And these aren't just Amazon. This is actually cleaning businesses here. They're the ones that are stealing every one of your good employees that otherwise you could be interviewing and hiring. Mm-hmm. And that's the scorecard, man.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yep.
I do think we lose a lot of potential applicants even just outside of the industry because people aren't thinking about entering the home service space.
Yeah.
They know about the big employers, right? And so that's who we're competing against. We need to, and you might talk about keyword searches and stuff like that to kind of draw their attention away from food service, from warehouses, from Amazon, whatever. But that's who they know. They don't know about our businesses. They don't know about our industry. So we need to, part of it is we need to spend some money. Part of it is we need to be better marketers towards applicants, not always just towards clients that are searching for home cleaning or searching for lighting or whatever the case is that we have.
And here's a good point too, because it just came to mind after you're talking about that, Dan, is we're at about 3.5% unemployment in the country. That's the average. I see some stuff at 2%. It's crazy. Those are the ones that are at 99 and 100. Okay. Most of the time. So if 97 to 98% of the people that are able to work and willing to work are working, we need to figure out how to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, think about our job. So we call those passive candidates. So what we do in some of our strategies, and you can do this out there, is number one, you can do resume searches. So when you do resume searches, you can do it on ZipRecruiter, Indeed, you can do Boolean. We can talk about that for days. But if you can do find some resumes online, and what you need to do is just put in Motel 6 if you're a house cleaning business, Motel 6, Red Roof Inn, housekeepers. Let me tell you can you imagine what a poor maid type of person or hotel cleaning person sees when they're cleaning a room at midnight? Okay. What they see, smell, and what their perception is when they go into that room. All right. And they're working nights, they're working weekends, and they're working Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and all that other stuff. Most every one of my clients in the residential home cleaning space don't work on weekends, don't work at nights, do not work and holidays. And guess what you're going to go clean? Sometimes a house that you don't even know it's clean after you cleaned it because it's so clean before you cleaned it. And you're going into nice homes. You're not going into Motel 6 and they've got to clean. They got like 10 minutes to clean all of these. We get a ton of applicants from Motel 6 and some of these other Red Roof Inns. We do the same thing with exterior cleaning stuff. Are you tired of climbing up ladders with shingles and huge ripping down roofs? Or would you think about cleaning some windows and soft washing and that type of thing? We do that depending on who the client is. That's called going after passive candidates. It was either in May or June, and the report just came out yesterday, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but May or June, 11 million people quit their job. 11 million people quit their job. So there's still a lot of fluidity in the labor market, right? So you've got to be as many platforms as possible, all the free stuff. We average 25, 30 job boards, free stuff, just to get it out there. Google for jobs, we're everywhere, right? Because you never know. If 11 million people are moving around and loyalty's out the drain, they're not going home and eating. Some are retiring, maybe in the baby boomers still. The majority of them are going, hey, boss, screw you. I can make $5 an hour up the road. Adios. We want to make sure they're looking at our ad when they're thinking about that.
Yep. Always be prudent.